Hey, and welcome to the Megan Waldrop podcast. And I want to dive in today and talk about how Bad Bunny taught our nervous systems how to feel safe. And sure, we're talking about Bad Bunny, but we're also not really talking about Bad Bunny. We're talking about identity and about being second generation, about being half Puerto Rican, and what that means for our nervous systems and how it was shaped by survival for so many of us. And also about what joy, real, true, embodied joy, why it can feel so vulnerable and also so powerful at the same time. And I want to start off by saying I'm not here to be political. I'm here to be Puerto Rican. That's all I'm saying. I am half Puerto Rican, very proud. My mother is 100%. My grandmother's, my grandfather, all from the island, and they moved to the United States years ago. And back in the, God, what was it, the 50s? And several of my aunts and uncles were born there. And I'll get more into that later. But I want to talk about the halftime show. It was really interesting because watching it just something shifted in my body, and it wasn't just entertainment. It felt like home, and it was so powerful to see. Of course, the very end when all the flags came out and he was talking about how, we are all America, was just so beautiful how he united the Latin cultures. But just seeing everybody jump up and down and dancing, it reminded me of my mom's family. Like every single family reunion is just full of laughter, music, joy. I mean, just nobody's taking themselves seriously. And it's so interesting to think how many hardships they had gone through, but they are the happiest family that I've ever been around. And I know many of us can identify with this in our own history, and I would love to hear about yours. Of course, let's talk about it in the comments if you're watching me on YouTube, or DM me. You can also email me at support@meganwaldrop.com. So like I said, I'm half Puerto Rican, and what that meant for me my whole life, I'm 44, it meant that I lived in that in-between state. I was also a Puerto Rican who didn't grow up speaking Spanish, and we moved around the world. I was a military brat, but I never really understood. I never was really faced with these two different cultures that I had until I'd have to choose my race on a government official form, which there were lots as a military kid. But there was a box. I feel like they've changed over time, but there's always that choose your race. And now they say choose your ethnicity. But going between, am I white? Am I Spanish? Am I Hispanic? As they would say. And I never, ever chose one. I'd either check both, even though it says choose one. I would either check both. I didn't care. Or I would check other and I would write in, I'm half Puerto Rican, half Caucasian, or whatever the heck the words were. But it was also interesting because, and my sister and I talk about this too, in the recent years of feeling a half Puerto Rican who doesn't speak Spanish and almost feeling like my sister said, she goes, I kind of almost feel like a poser. And I'm like, girl, I totally understand what you're saying. And I know there's so many people out there with these Latin roots or any kind of roots that feel like, oh, I don't really know if I really fit in with my culture because I'm not immersed in it every single day. I don't speak the language. But my love is there. My deep love and pride and total curiosity and awe of my culture is there. And so, where does that leave me? Who am I? Right. But it's interesting too, because when it comes to our nervous systems, if you're second generation, first generation, if you're a human being on this planet, our, we inherit so many different things. We inherit our culture, but we also inherit that resilience that our culture has lived through. But we also inherit nervous systems that have been shaped by survival and whatever that means for you. For my family, Puerto Rico, such a deep, beautiful island. I can go on and on and on. The people, number one, but also the struggles of living in Puerto Rico. It's very challenging to live there, as Bad Bunny showed in the halftime show. I mean, one of them is just the power outages. There's not full support there. And I went there 2 years ago and was just really taken aback by how it felt like a developing country in certain ways, in certain parts of the island. And I'm like, this is America? What is going on here? What the F are we doing this is a Commonwealth of America, but it feels like some of the most desolate places that I've traveled to in the world, where I'm like, how is this even associated with this great country of America when these people are suffering in these ways, not only the power outages, but also the food is so expensive. I mean, you go to a grocery store and it is like shopping at Whole Foods even more, and you're just going to the local grocery store down the street because you get groceries in Puerto Rico, but they have to go to the United States first and then they travel to Puerto Rico. They can't just ship it straight to the island. So all of those taxes for however much it costs to transport these goods to Puerto Rico. So it adds up. This is why it's so expensive for people to live there, the locals. But let's go back to the nervous system. So you inherit this pride of your culture. And for some of us, it's also, and for my mom's generation, first generation, it was almost like this: don't talk about your culture. My grandparents came over to the United States. My grandfather joined the army, and that's how he was able to leave the island to, quote unquote, build a better life for their family, because there are very limited options in Puerto Rico. And I hope that changes very soon. And so they left he was in the military. So many more stories there. But when their kids were growing up, they didn't want their kids to face that same hardship, the same type of, I mean, honestly, racism, straight up, that they faced. So they wouldn't want them to speak Spanish at home. They wanted them to speak English. They wanted them to be as American, quote unquote, American as possible. So my mom grew up in this duality of a home where it was Puerto Rican food only and only speaking Spanish, or the mother speaking Spanish to them, my grandmother, but they weren't really encouraged to speak Spanish. They were encouraged to learn English. They were encouraged to be as, you know, American as possible. And so that was also carried on to me and my sister, because when we were born, we have our beautiful, you can't hide a Puerto Rican family. Like, we love being with them. But at home, I wasn't taught Spanish. And my mom, I think, also felt maybe a little insecure about her speaking Spanish because she wasn't as practiced as she maybe was when she was younger. She didn't even speak English when she was younger. She only spoke Spanish and French. She was born in France, but that's a whole other story. Feeling calm and safe in our body and nervous system is how we define success in 2026. And it shows in how we care for ourselves and the people we love. Kent Safety Products makes flotation gear that gives both recreational and professional boaters peace of mind on the water. So whether it's a family day out or a long day on the job, you can focus on the breeze, the waves, and the moments that matter. Because safety is freedom. Freedom is calm. And calm lets your energy flow where it matters most. Visit KentSafetyProducts.com to learn more. That's KentSafetyProducts.com. But just feeling kind of like this, am I even speaking right of my culture? So then she didn't really have anybody to talk to. My dad didn't speak Spanish. And so we just didn't. And we grew up a military kid living in Hawaii, living in Germany, and witnessing all these really beautiful cultures. I mean, the Hawaiian culture is just so incredible. And talk about a culture who is trying to hold on to their stories. I mean, that is a million proof right there. And Bad Bunny even has a song about that. Like, let's not make Puerto Rico turn into Hawaii, where it's very hard to find actual Hawaiians there anymore. I mean, there's Hawaiians that are going to an island just so they can preserve their culture. And it's interesting because people, I feel like, also don't understand that, in the sense of, well, of course they want to keep their culture. It's not resistance to other cultures. Okay. It's preserving the stories and the history that they know so well. I see this from Californians moving to Texas, and people from Texas are pissed. Like, it's not everybody from Texas, but some people are not excited about Californians moving to Texas because they say that they're going to bring their ideology and they're going to bring, whatever it is. But that's exactly how every other culture feels all the time. Okay. Even in going to Bali, went to Bali. Bali is the only island in Indonesia. There's so many islands. It's massive. It's the only island that's still Hindu, and the rest of Indonesia is all Muslim, because it wasn't originally like that, but it was because Muslim came over and they made themselves, they brought their culture. I'm not shaming this. I'm just showing how this happens throughout the world. And and even within our local states. I mean, people get pissed about, anybody from any part of the country moving to their neck of the woods because they don't want them to change what they've known so well. And so, yeah, it's such an interesting, complex notion of that. And, what's also interesting is that within all this, what is the word? When it comes to people feeling like their cultures are being taken away, it can also bring up a little bit of cultural superiority. And if I'm being honest, I had to unlearn that because every culture, I mean, you could deny it, but it's true if you look into it deeply. It doesn't mean I'm talking to you, but I'm saying generally this speaks. Different cultures feel that they are more superior than others. Latin cultures, there's I feel like until the halftime show, there's a hierarchy. In Asian cultures, there's a hierarchy. In the United States, where you live, which state you live in, there's a hierarchy. There's this cultural superiority going on because some people feel that, they've had to endure such traumas and challenges to be like, well, we survived, so we're the best. But it's not, yeah, it's great that you celebrate that your culture is strong and it's vibrant and that you've survived, and that's beautiful. But when it comes to comparison, it becomes a mine is better thing, and that's where it all goes out the window. And like I said, I had to unlearn that because we have to understand that, to respect our culture, we really have to truly respect others to see what it's like for them, but also to be inspired and also to see how similar we are. And that's the thing too. Like I said, I didn't grow up speaking Spanish, but I've learned Spanish. And a big part of my learning Spanish was in Mexico. Chris and I lived on a sailboat. We traveled from Washington State down to the Baja Peninsula and all throughout the Sea of Cortez. And we ended up in Puerto Vallarta. And it was over a 2-year period. And that's where I got to practice Spanish the first time I've ever. And it was I love Mexico. I love the Mexican people, so generous. And it was so interesting to me because this is a culture that was not seemed it was interesting to know that I was learning a different type of language. I was learning a different type of Spanish. And it also made me proud to want to know more about my Puerto Rican culture, but it also kind of made me go, am I doing this right? Should I feel shame that I'm not learning my own language from my culture? And so, does this make me less authentic? And I think that's what second generation kids live with quietly is like, am I enough of this? Am I too much of that? Is it too late for me to embrace my culture? And that's why I have my nephews call me Tia. That's aunt in Spanish. I cook Puerto Rican food. My goal is to always to learn Puerto Rican food, learn Spanish, and then to immerse my nephews in this culture, which means when they come to Tia's house, I'm making food. There's also going to be music playing, Spanish music, and I'm teaching them random Spanish words here and there, and they're interested. And it's not about the perfection. It's about just having them feel comfortable within that and to know that, hey, this is really special. And how cool is it that we get to celebrate this together? So when Bad Bunny stood on that halftime show stage, I mean, unapologetically Puerto Rican, it was a sense of pride and awe. And what struck me, it wasn't even the spectacle of the show, which, by the way, was incredibly artistic, history driven, poetry in motion. It was watching a culture regulate through rhythm, watching Latin cultures, watching America regulate through rhythm. And it's just so beautiful. At the end, when he had all the flags come out and he named all the Latin countries of America, it was in that moment where that cultural superiority just went out the window. It was about, we are all together in this. We are all one. And it reminds me of what it's like to live in the South. Because I've said this before, living in the South is such a particular, beautiful place to live. And it's so complex in so many ways. But there's no other part of the country that you could go to and feel kinship with a state that's several states away. Maybe the Midwest, but really it's the South. You could be from Texas and you learn from somebody in Virginia, or like, oh, you're from Virginia? Oh yeah, I'm from Texas. Oh, we get along. Like I met a girl I was in California in Napa Valley, and we were at a yoga class together, and She was like, I'm from Atlanta. I was like, oh, I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. We're like, oh, hey, sister. It was like we had this kinship. And that's what I felt like it was at the end of that halftime show. It was this unifying, this unification of these Latin cultures. There was no superiority. It was like, hell yes. And one of the other beautiful things was seeing Instagram reels of families, Latin families watching the halftime show and seeing them overcome with emotion, and not just Puerto Ricans, because obviously, what a huge day for Puerto Ricans. Wow. But to see people from Ecuador, to see people from Belize and all over the place, and these families waving their flags and just tears coming to their eyes and celebration when they heard him recognize their country name. It was just like, because people don't feel recognized. And it feels how beautiful that they could have that love, that shout out that we are all one, that this country that you may not think is a part of this. And it was just beautiful. It really was. And it was that, joy. That joy is the regulation of our nervous system. Dancing is regulating our nervous system. Community regulates the nervous system. And it wasn't chaotic and it wasn't angry. It was embodied. And that's when it becomes more than a halftime show. It becomes a moment in time. I mean, I told my mom, I said, I feel like my life is before the Benito Bowl and after, because now I feel strengthened in my Puerto Rican roots, and I feel excited to connect with other Latin cultures and also to share our culture with other people, which I'm so stoked that you're here too, because it's just it's such a gift. And the thing is, like, I know that not everybody gets it. Like, that's totally fine. Not everything is for everyone. Like, I texted to my friends in Augusta. There's a group chat of us, bunch of dudes, high school friends. These are like my brothers, and there's about 10 of us, a couple girls, and too many guys. Too many guys. I'm just kidding. I love them all. But I send pictures of my family, and I'm like, best halftime show ever. And, some hearted it, and some were like, well, I don't know about the best halftime show. And they sent a link to Prince. They sent a link to Michael Jackson. I just saw on Instagram, someone's like, no offense to Bad Bunny, but this is my favorite halftime show. And it was Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. And I'm like, yeah, those are epic shows. Like, there's no doubt about those artists being incredible artists. But for me, the difference was those were incredibly entertaining. And of course, those songs resonate with people more because you grew up with that music. You recognize those songs more than you would a Bad Bunny song. But it was entertaining. There was no deep historical storytelling there. There wasn't a sincere movement, a sincere call to action to bring people together and to unite them in that way. No shame to any of them, but I'm just saying, to me, you just can't compare. You really can't. So, you know, that's the other thing about this, the joy. People were really anticipating this show. And I also was like, is this going to be political? I am so anti-political. I can't even tell you. Like, I used to be involved, and now I cannot even waste my energy on it. It's like, it's just not even worth it to me. I'm here for the people. I'm not here for the politicians. That's the thing about the joy part and regulating our nervous system. It's like, it's not having to prove yourself. There was no proving. There was no, like I mentioned before, there was no anger. This was just celebration. And it was just a good old time. There was no pressure. There was no, you have to stay alert. You have to defend, don't mess it up. It was joy, which meant it required the opposite of that. It meant being open to play. It meant being seen. It meant laughing. It meant those beautiful tears of joy. It meant feeling pride without shrinking and celebrating without proving. And that is vulnerable. And it really opened up those hearts for so many. And it's funny because with our nervous systems too, sometimes when something good happens, our first instinct is to brace. Like, that was fun. Okay, wait, what shoe is going to drop now? What's about to go wrong? Like, that's not personality. It's a condition that we have to unlearn. And it's not our faults. This is just the way that we've been born. And it's the way that, we've been aware of our world so far. And so that halftime show, I saw a quote that said, the halftime show was a pure example of how joy is an act of resistance. And to me, I say joy is an act of resistance in terms of our nervous system. And I don't mean political resistance. I mean resistance to that internal negativity. How can we bring joy when we're starting to feel bogged down and hear that voice in our head that says, tone it down. Who are you to do this? Or this is stupid. Or I can't do this. Like that is the joy. Like, how about we just get curious about that joy? Bring curiosity to that joy and be like, oh wait, you say I can't do this? Well, what would it feel like if I believed I could do this? How would it feel in my body to not feel negative feelings? And it's not just the thinking of the negative thoughts. It's how would it feel if I didn't feel anxious about this? Like, how does it feel to surrender and relax my nerves right now? Like, you can try it right now. Like, I try this too. If you say fear, fear, fear 3 times to yourself, you can say it out loud if you want, and you can feel your body just clench together, like getting tighter. But then if you say love, 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 and you can feel that expansiveness, it's subtle too. Sometimes it can feel bigger, sometimes it can feel very minute, but the point is that's the subtle shifts in our nervous system. That's what I'm talking about when it's how can you feel into this? It's like, how do you go from that shrinking clench feeling to, oh, how can I bring joy into this situation and let it override the parts of us that believe that we're not allowed to feel good at any moment? And here's what I believe too, that negativity, it doesn't weaken us, it strengthens us. Only if we don't let it harden us. Joy keeps us soft without making us weak. It makes us be open to the beauty of life and to not get bogged down by other people's opinions, or I feel like other people's opinions, number one, or any kind of social media comparison or the news. That is just the noise. That is all superficial. That is not who you are. That is not who we are internally. That is not our nervous system. Our nervous system is reacting to that when our sympathetic nervous system comes on and it's like fight or flight. This sucks. I'm angry. These people are pissing me off. But it's like, okay, how do I relax into joy? That halftime show, it hit for so many because it felt inclusive. It felt that expansion. People were bracing. They were waiting for this. Like, oh my gosh, what's he going to do? I heard he's going to do this, or I heard he's going to walk out and say this. And it wasn't any of that. It was all people being celebrated without any competition. Yeah, that's the thing. Celebration doesn't require competition. Pride doesn't require superiority. And you can love your roots deeply without stepping on someone else's. And that's nervous system maturity. And here's a question for you. What part of your culture or your history and your roots do you want to celebrate more boldly this year? How do you want to do that? Do you want to learn some recipes that maybe your family cooked for you when you were young, or maybe you didn't get a chance to enjoy those recipes so you can look them up and teach yourself how to cook them for them? Or do you want to hop on a Duolingo and learn a few words or phrases? Or, go to some more cultural events that are going on around town. What does that look like for you? How would you like to connect with your culture more deeply this year? And the thing about being second generation, it doesn't mean that you have to live in survival mode just because your DNA has that survival mode in it. You can teach your body that joy is safe. You can breathe into the good moments instead of rushing past them. And know that the better it gets, the better it gets, the better it gets. You're not going to max out on the joy. You're not going to max out on the best time of your life. It's just going to get better and better and better. You can let yourself dance. You can let yourself be a part of your culture without proving to anyone. One of my favorite takeaways from Bad Bunny, and I heard this on a podcast too, is that you're Puerto Rican no matter where you live. It doesn't matter who you are or where you live or what your background is. Whatever your culture is, that's who you are no matter where you live. You don't have to be from that island. You don't have to live there. You don't have to speak the language. Your blood doesn't lie. Your blood is true. And you can let yourself feel totally alive in that and be proud without apology. And that's not denial, that's growth. That's self acceptance and that's self love. So I'd love for you to ask yourself too, where in your life are you bracing instead of celebrating? And what would it look like to let joy be safe in that area? So maybe joy is an act of resistance, but not resistance to a person. It's resistance to shrinking, a resistance to bracing, and a resistance to the idea that celebration is naive. Joy is what survival looks like when it's reached a point of realizing the blessings that we have in this lifetime, no matter our backgrounds and where we are in life or where we live. And watching that halftime show felt like a reminder that we don't just survive, we dance through life. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.